These are my favorite pair of jeans, and they are totally trashed. They're going to need a fair amount of work if they're ever going to be wearable again.
The plan is to rip the jeans down to the individual panels, identify any areas of damage, patch the ones that can be easily reinforced, and replace any sections that are too heavily damaged. I'll then be able to recut the pattern and assemble.
Oh, you have no idea how much I've missed wearing these jeans. They're just so reliable, so comfortable, so perfect in every way. But they have been out of rotation for quite a while, mainly because I can fit my entire fist through this hole in the arse. And you might be wondering, well, you've patched them so many times before, why are you not just going to patch them again? Good point, and I did think about that on several occasions, but the reality is, like, if you look the yoke here, I'll get you a close-up. You can see it's just so thin, and it's particularly thin around the seams. There's no way to patch that to fix it. So really, if I want these jeans to have a future, I need to deconstruct them completely. I am worried about some pretty serious things like taking the rivets out. That's not going to be easy. Get a drill in there. It's time to get the unpicker out. Oh god, I'm really worried I'm going to destroy these.
I did most of the unpicking off camera. One day I'll make a proper guide to unpicking, but as I'm named for the skill, I'm gonna take some time over that. The trickiest seam to open up was the one where I'd patched over the join on the yoke. I opened up the back of the seam up to the patch, then carefully cut only the patch, allowing me to open up the rest of the seam as usual. Taking out the rivets turned out to be fairly simple. I got a good grip of the pointy bit in my vise, oiled up my drill bit, and slowly drilled into the metal. Eventually the back of the rivet just came off, but this would have been much harder without the vise. You may think it's obvious what damage needs to be repaired, but to make sure, I taped the panels onto a window and the real depth of the problem is revealed. All these areas where light is coming through need to be strengthened. I work through each panel in this way until I have a map of the work I need to do. The damage on the knees gets a simple patch. I'm lucky enough to have this Japanese linen that was gifted to me, perfect for this application. I cut a patch that will fit the area of the damage, baste it in place with a tailor stitch, then run equally spaced lines of straight stitch to join. You could of course hand stitch this in a traditional sashiko style, or add the patches on top like Boro, but I'm wanting a quick fix that will keep the damage on show, giving this grungy effect. For the more complex areas at the top of the panel, I want to avoid doubling up the fabric. Instead, I decide to replace it completely with new fabric. I gather up my scraps of denim and decide to work with these rarely worn shorts. I line up the donor panel, making sure I'll have enough fabric to work with, cut it to size, and cut the damaged area off the jeans. These are joined with a straight stitch, and the seam is pressed open and top stitched down. Maybe I should have added a zigzag stitch to these raw edges, but time will tell. On the other leg, I was feeling more confident and applied my complex patching technique, which I cover in detail in this film. But I cut away the damage, off camera I pressed over the raw edge, marked the join on the donor panel, which was also cut and pressed, and once carefully joined, the seam was opened up and secured with a top stitch.
Here are some finished panels. Rather than me holding these up, I will throw up some shots as we talk about them. Some of you out there might think this looks great, and some of you will be like, this is a dog's dinner, what are you doing? You can't wear these in public. But for me, these collection of rags are quite exciting. There's a bunch of different techniques that have happened. You know, we've got the OG sashiko stuff that I've done. We've got like one of my favorite repair stitches of all time, the Parachute Rangers stitch. We've got this sort of weird I don't know, I need to find a name, but it's sashiko but on a machine. And that's putting in these big panels of reinforcement on the back here. And then of course there's the brand new replacements, but I really love this sort of water ripples fading on the top. Looks really cool in my opinion. And you can see same process on this knee. I've opened this out, so I'm gonna pick at this, open it up a bit more, distress it. This back panel, so what I did here, rather than like actually patchwork around all of this, which arguably would probably have looked better. It would have looked much cleaner, but it would have been hugely time consuming. So what I did instead was just patchwork across the main horizontal and then I guess applique the top into place. So I ran out of this blue, I don't know, it was some really naff shorts, but I ran out of that stuff and had to switch over to this black denim. So this might be a bit of a contrast. It definitely sets this panel apart from the other three. So it might be a bit much, but the yolks are going to be out of this material and I might do the patch pockets in this color just to make it a bit more coherent, but we'll see. But we've got a long journey ahead of us. Next, we've got to cut the panels and I get to find out if I've put enough material in the right places so that I can actually cut out my new pattern. So let's get to that. Let's get to work.
I start with the back panels and lay both of them out right sides together, trying to match them up as best as possible. My pattern is laid out on top. This is my jeans pattern drafted for the Carpenter Trousers film, but a commercial pattern would work for this too. Cutting the pattern, there's just enough material and I lay both panels out to tidy up the edges by eye. It's the same process for the front panels, but you can see that I leave the original width of the leg to keep the baggy shape. I had saved the original pockets and they were in good enough shape that they could be reused. I traced the shape of the pocket opening on one of the panels, laid the panels back on top of each other and cut the pocket shape. I cut the yokes from the dress that's been supplying the black denim and pulled the patch pockets from these unloved Levi's. And with the original waistband, I have all the parts I need to reconstruct the jeans. First, I line up the inside surface of the pocket bags with the right side of the front leg panels and pin in place. These are straight stitched together and the seam is pressed over, trying to force the seam into the pocket slightly. These get 2 lines of top stitching and I press them again to position the pockets. I ran a zigzag stitch along the 2 outside edges to base the pockets in place and secure the raw edges. The yokes got joined with a flat felled seam, which became a bit of a mission for my poor old machine, as there was about 8 layers of fabric to get through at the patch. The final prep work was to add the patch pockets. I'm not going to show the full construction for these, as it's the same pattern as the Carpenter Trousers, and I give a full breakdown of the process in that film. So instead, this is the final garment. And for one episode only, I'm prancing about on Santa Monica Beach, rather than my dreary, unkempt garden. I'm so in love with these, I'm more than willing to wear them in Scott-melting 30-degree heat. In the end, the contrasting black section worked out a treat. Because I've replaced so much of these around the hips, they don't feel particularly bulky to wear, except around the knees, which is more comforting than anything. The depth of detail, texture and technique elevate these above the patched denim they once were, and far beyond the generic Gap jeans they started out as. But, as always, there are faults.
The faults aren't that bad. The reality of the garment is that it hides any mistakes because the mistakes are integral to the build. So you don't notice if there's like some sort of like raggedy bit or something that's not quite right, because it's all raggedy bits and it's all not quite right. The other thing with this is that I was rushing. I was doing this and the Halloween costume all to try and get it all finished before I went away on the holiday. And because of that, I allowed some things that I probably wouldn't have allowed if I had given myself a bit more time. What are the things that we do have to discuss? Well, I caught the seam in the crotch, the front rise seam, putting it together with the flat felled seam, and I caught fabric at some point. It made a little fold. It changed the height at the waistline, so where the fly meets, it slightly stepped. But I just grabbed the scissors and like just cut the other one to match. Not my finest moment, but it did work. It did like scoop down the front waistline a bit. I never tuck in my t-shirts. Nobody's ever gonna see the waistline. They're not gonna know what's going on there. But that also led to another interesting thing, which is the waistband itself. I've taken about I don't know, 3 to 4 centimeters off the waistline. I know, humble brag. I reused the existing waistband, A, to save time, and B, because I wanted to reuse as much of this garment as possible. The problem is that I hadn't taken off enough material to be able to like snip off the old buttonhole and like cleanly finish it. So what I ended up doing, it's a feature, not a fault. I added the new buttonhole and just left what the excess fabric to hang over like a little tab. It's just another thing that makes it a unique garment, but it's not great sewing. The most basic error that I made, and it's pretty bad, is that I didn't actually trim the flat felled seams on the rise join. I should have trimmed off part of the seam allowance on like the right leg. So what's happened, and like it's completely imperceivable, you can't tell, but the garment is ever so slightly larger on the right side. It's really odd to wear because it just feels like the garment's kind of twisting around you. Every time I do a flat felled seam, I really have to think. I have to rewatch my video. I always end up getting there in the end, but I really wish I hadn't cut that corner because it's kind of affected the garment. And then a construction issue. I was constructing this on my domestic machine. It did so well. I'm so proud of it, but there were a couple of points where I was like doing flat felled seams over the top of existing flat felled seams, and there was just no way to get that much fabric bulk through my machine without just destroying it. In the end, I just hand sewed it. It's fine. They're perfectly adequate. They've worked out great. They look a bit rough, but again, and you'll also see as well, I haven't hemmed the cuffs. Again, that was a rushing, I don't need to do this, so I'm not going to do it. And I expected, like, now that I'm back, I was like, oh, I'll do it when I get back. But I quite like it. It's adding another raggedy edge to the garment from opening up the original hem. There's this really beautiful wear pattern where the dye's been worn out in certain places. So I don't really want to have to just like trim it off and say goodbye. We'll see what happens after like another 4 or 5 washes and if it becomes like a major issue and I need to do something about it. But right now, they look pretty. And then I guess the last thing to talk about would be the corners on the patch. When you get around the corners, you kind of got to jump the gap as you go around. Something that probably will improve with practice. I'll probably get better at this, but so far I seem to be leaving these little, effectively, holes. And there's one in particular that's a bit baggy that's right next to the fly. So I might have to go back in and do something about that. It doesn't seem weaker. We'll keep an eye on it. If something happens, I will patch it, I will fix it up, and I'll probably add it to the collection of films about these trousers. That's the Forever Ever jeans. I'm so in love with them. Honestly, like this has been a labor of love for a really long time. I really enjoy picking at them. That's literally what I'm doing at the moment. I really love just like making them look worse and worse all the time. If this is an aesthetic that you can get behind and that you're up for it, I highly recommend you do it. It's going to be a long process, it takes time. You just keep repairing, you keep wearing them, keep damaging them, keep repairing them, and they just keep aging like a fine wine. Otherwise, I think we're finished here. Thank you so much for watching. It's really, really appreciated if you got this far into the video. Let me know what you think of them. You can add comments, all that sort of stuff. I would really like to meet the people that like are really upset about these. Like, these are disgusting. Whoa, what have you done there? You can't wear that. If you've enjoyed this video, you can watch more videos on the channel. You should subscribe if you've really enjoyed it. Like, if you want to see more of my face, come on back. So hit that subscribe button. And otherwise, I think that's me. Have a lovely day. I'll see you next time. Bye. Bye. Bye.